Clap de fin pour la troisième session conjointe du Comité Intergouvernemental des hauts fonctionnaires experts de l'Afrique centrale et de l'Est, un forum d'échange de haut niveau qui s'est ouvert donc mardi 15 octobre dernier dans la capitale politique du Cameroun, Yaoundé, avec pour fil conducteur mise en œuvre rapide des solutions de recherche et d'innovation pour accélérer la diversification économique en Afrique centrale et de l'Est. Et aujourd'hui, donc, en direct donc, depuis Yaoundé, nous avons le plaisir de vous offrir un plateau spécial bilingue avec des experts de haut vol. Monsieur Jean-Luc Mastaki, directeur du bureau sous-régional Afrique centrale pour la Commission économique des Nations Unies pour l'Afrique. Merci pour cet honneur.
Un plaisir.
Et juste à côté de vous, une lady, une grande dame, docteur Mafini. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
On rappelle aux téléspectateurs que vous êtes expert, économiste de l'innovation, présidente de l'Organisation internationale de l'innovation pour les territoires et industries durables. Merci une fois de plus. Et juste à côté de vous, monsieur Andrew Moult, qui est le directeur du bureau sous-régional Afrique de l'Est pour la CEA. Thank you so much. Alors, ce plateau spécial donc sera reparti en deux parties, on va le dire, alors en deux sessions. La première session, nous aborderons la problématique centrale, la recherche et l'innovation comme moteur de l'accélération de la productivité. Alors, monsieur Jean-Luc Mastaki, quel est le lien entre recherche, innovation, mais surtout diversification économique, qui prétexte même cette rencontre internationale qui vient de s'achever ici à Yaoundé?
Merci beaucoup pour cette question qui est finalement la filigrane des discussions que nous avons eues ici pendant 4 jours. La CEA a toujours eu un message clair. Nos économies de l'Afrique centrale comme de l'Afrique de l'Est, même si celles de l'Afrique centrale ne sont plus prononcées, ne sont pas diversifiées. C'est-à-dire que ces économies continuent à dépendre des matières premières dans leurs exportations, et lorsqu'on regarde la part de ces matières premières sans valeur ajoutée, on se rend compte qu'ils sont très vulnérables aux chocs exogènes, comme le ministre l'a si bien souligné, que ce soit des chocs de prix, que ce soit des perturbations des circuits d'approvisionnement, comme ça a été le cas très récemment. Nos économies sont à la merci de ces fluctuations-là. Et la diversification économique signifie pour la CEA, à travers le consensus des Douala que nous avons bâti avec toutes les parties prenantes en 2017, pour nous, la diversification économique, c'est l'augmentation de la part des produits manufacturés dans les exportations de nos pays. Au-delà des produits manufacturés, c'est le renforcement de la part des services modernes et à grande productivité dans les exportations de nos pays. Et s'il faut augmenter la part des produits manufacturés, il faut donc s'industrialiser. Il faut donner la valeur ajoutée à nos produits. Et la valeur ajoutée, l'industrialisation, passe par de nouveaux procédés de production. L'innovation est un nouveau procédé de production qui permet, dans des langages courants aujourd'hui, de produire plus avec moins ou de produire mieux avec moins. Il s'agit donc d'adopter de nouvelles pratiques, que ce soit en termes de systèmes de production, en termes de combinaison de facteurs, en termes de stratégie et arrangements institutionnels de mise en marché. Adopter de nouvelles pratiques qui nous permettent d'augmenter la valeur ajoutée, d'avoir plus de productivité et d'avoir un meilleur accès au marché. Voici le lien entre la diversification et l'innovation. Et comme le ministre l'a si bien souligné encore ce matin, l'innovation reste le socle de la croissance économique. Si elle doit être inclusive et durable, il faut que l'innovation aussi soit inclusive et durable. Et donc à promouvoir pour la grande partie de notre population.
D'accord. Alors, docteur Mafini, les expériences des pays européens, voire africains, dont préconisent des stratégies de spécialisation intelligente dans des territoires. Il s'agit des approches qui sont liées, qui sont ciblées au développement même de la recherche de l'innovation. De quoi s'agit-il concrètement?
Merci beaucoup pour cette question et je vais rebondir sur également mon confrère docteur à ma gauche en disant qu'il faut faire la promotion de l'innovation. Donc, les stratégies de spécialisation intelligente font justement la promotion de l'innovation, mais elles le font dans des contextes territoriaux différents en prenant en compte les caractéristiques et les ressources propres au territoire, ainsi que les défis qui sont rencontrés par les entreprises. Donc, en une phrase, vraiment de façon très générique, les stratégies de spécialisation intelligente, c'est une nouvelle génération de politiques industrielles et d'innovation qui vont permettre aux différents territoires qui composent nos pays ou nos régions d'identifier des priorités très pragmatiques. Donc, on va au-delà de dire qu'on veut améliorer, par exemple, la productivité ou la compétitivité et on donne une directionnalité à cette façon de faire de la priorité. Ensuite, ces stratégies reconnaissent que les territoires ont des ressources limitées. On a des connaissances, on a des savoir-faire, on a des infrastructures, on a du capital humain, on a du capital financier, mais en général, ce sont des ressources qui sont limitées. Donc, la STRI, ou stratégie de spécialisation intelligente, reprend cette idée et donne des cadres et des outils à ces différents territoires, villes ou régions, pour pouvoir mieux prioriser selon justement ces différentes ressources-là. Donc, c'est comme si on donnait une stratégie pour allouer des ressources vers des domaines d'innovation qui sont beaucoup plus pragmatiques que ce qui est formulé actuellement.
Mr. Andrew Moore, East Africa seems to be more advanced in terms of research and innovation. What's the real impact for you of this advance on productive sector while food insecurity remains real?
Well, there's certainly some interesting innovations which have come from East Africa. So, for example, M-Pesa is one which is often spoken about, and that's really changed the way people deal with financial issues. And the level of penetration of that kind of technology in countries like Kenya is extremely high. The vast majority of the population use these for financial transfers. There's also interest in developments like in Rwanda. There's a company which dedicates itself to providing medicines to villages using drones as a delivery mechanism.
Okay.
So those kind of innovations are important, but I would stress still that East Africa confronts the same kind of challenge that you see in Central Africa in terms of still having very low levels of spending on research and development. And in the presentation we made during this conference, we actually stressed that this is in some way related to the underrepresentation of our sub-regions in terms of having large enough companies able to engage in those kind of expenditures on research and development.
Okay. Alors, Monsieur Jean-Luc Mastaki, au cœur de la recherche même et de l'innovation se placent deux déterminants centraux, notamment la formation et de l'autre côté, le financement. Pour avoir des centres de recherche performants, comment y parvenir?
Effectivement, comme vient de le dire mon collègue, notre niveau de financement de la recherche et développement est très faible. Pour la plupart de nos pays, nous sommes en bas de 0,5% du PIB attendu pour la recherche. Et au-delà de cela, sur la carte du financement privé, la recherche et développement, nos sous-régions ne sont pas visibles. Il faut donc des réflexions, de nouvelles réflexions sur comment mobiliser du financement innovant pour la recherche et le développement. Et pour nous, le partenariat public et privé est clé. Il va falloir que l'État, le secteur privé se mettent ensemble pour pouvoir promouvoir la recherche. Et pour que le secteur privé, le financement privé soit canalisé vers la recherche et le développement, il faut que les innovations soient protégées. Et donc, les arrangements institutionnels tels que la protection des droits de propriété intellectuelle deviennent alors stratégiques. Tant qu'on n'en aura pas, il va être difficile d'encourager les gens à aller vers l'innovation, à produire des innovations de façon durable. Vous avez suivi pendant les discussions, il a été souligné plusieurs fois le rôle de la fuite des cerveaux, la fuite des innovateurs, vers là où les innovations sont mieux protégées et donc mieux rémunérées. Il faut que l'écosystème soit en place qui permette de protéger les innovateurs, mais aussi les lier, établir des plateformes et des liens au sein du système d'innovation lui-même, où ceux qui travaillent sur la recherche dans les laboratoires peuvent être liés aux projets industriels et avoir beaucoup plus de facilité de mise à marché de leurs innovations. Sinon, on reste à une seule phase préliminaire et qui ne permet pas de passer à l'échelle et d'embrasser le marché qui reste, en fin de compte, dans des systèmes plus avancés, le cadre par lequel la recherche privée est financée.
Docteur Mafini, vous qui êtes très proche du secteur privé, on va le dire ainsi, vous le savez si bien, l'Afrique compte, j'ai envie de dire, même est peuplée par des PME, des petites et moyennes entreprises. Quel type d'instruments le continent, selon vous, pourrait-il renforcer pour assurer dans l'innovation, dans le développement des chaînes de valeur prioritaires? Je pense ainsi à l'élevage, je pense à l'agriculture, la santé même, de façon globale.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question. Je pense qu'elle est aussi liée à l'argumentaire qui vient juste d'être développé. Le premier instrument, je pense qu'on est d'accord, ce sont des nouveaux instruments de mobilisation des ressources et de financement qu'on doit rediriger vers nos PME, mais qu'on doit être capable aussi de pouvoir concevoir ces instruments-là selon les besoins. Très simplement, il y a des PME qui veulent intégrer des innovations, mais qui veulent le faire au niveau du prototypage. Donc, il faut des financements spécifiques pour le prototypage. Il y a des PME qui veulent faire des tests sur le marché de leurs nouveaux produits. Selon les différents types de secteurs, on aura besoin de différents types de financement. On ne peut pas s'appuyer exclusivement que sur le financement bancaire. Il faut également, comme l'a dit le docteur, aussi mobiliser d'autres types de financement, inclus des grandes entreprises, par exemple, ou peut-être ce qu'on peut faire dans le domaine du capital risque. Donc, on a des instruments de financement, de mobilisation des ressources qui sont nécessaires, mais il faut savoir aussi que soutenir les PME industrielles pour qu'elles deviennent des PME compétitives et innovantes veut dire qu'on a aussi ce qu'on appelle des instruments qui vont être dirigés vers l'offre et des instruments qui vont être dirigés vers la demande. Donc, pendant qu'on renforce nos PME dans les différents aspects, il faut aussi qu'on renforce les pouvoirs d'achat pour pouvoir acquérir ce que ces PME vont produire. Donc, vous voyez qu'on arrive déjà à une cartographie très complexe d'instruments qui va bien sûr dépendre du type de chaîne de valeur et du type d'ambition qu'on a, bien sûr, pour la transformation structurelle ou le développement industriel.
Mr. Merle, East Africa is known for the large number of, of renowned training institutes burst. Okay, in Rwanda, for example, Kenya, in fields such as technology, engineering, entrepreneurship. So is there a way for the private sector to appropriate this invention or innovation?
That is actually the first time I hear about it. I mean, when I actually read about reports, there is a deficit in terms of the kind of technical training. Many companies, when you look at enterprise surveys like the World Bank Enterprise Surveys, they tend to complain about not being able to find enough skilled workers. Okay. So I think there are some challenges in terms of having people with the technical skills and knowledge. Now, one of the responses of that is to open up your labour markets, actually, and have more free movement at a continental level, and ECA very much supporting the free movement protocol, which is linked to the African Continental Free Trade Area, with the idea of precisely, there are universities across the continent producing skilled workers, but often they can't find gainful employment in the countries where they reside. So we believe that one of the policy solutions to this is to start to move towards a greater labour market flexibility at a continental level. Okay. So to address some of those skill shortages, yeah. I don't want to downplay, what universities and research centres do in the sub-region, but it's not necessarily that strong. We still have these challenges that we have as we see in other regions of the continent.
Alors, la deuxième session de ce plateau spécial, nous parlerons donc de la zone de libre-échange continentale 2 années après, ou bien 2 années plus tard. Qu'en est-il, où en sommes-nous? Et on va donc prendre cette partie uniquement en anglais avec vous, Monsieur Jean-Luc Mastaki. Alors, in Central Africa, only 2 countries are trading effectively into the Guide Trade Initiative. Are the other ACCS member states not ready to engage for you?
We have a very good experience within Cameroon, actually. Cameroon being part of the group initiative of countries which are piloting. I would like to underline that it's not just for those groups, that small group that we are thinking about, the AfCFTA. Others also are developing and deploying. And I would not say that our countries are not doing much, because all of them, for example, have been supported by ECA in developing their national strategies to harness the benefit arising from the AfCFTA, which shows that the willingness is there. But then, for a country to trade, as my colleague Andrew was saying, we need to strengthen their productive capacity, because actually it's a matter of bringing product to a market. Even if the tariff barriers are lowered and the non-tariff barriers are dismantled, if you don't have a competitive productive capacity, you would not benefit from this market. That's why we have to support these countries on the demand and supply side again, and helping them to understand what the AfCFTA means for them, but also support some value chains which have a potential to develop competitive goods which will be put on the market. And this, as ECA, we are working on the 2 fronts, actually. Helping countries developing, for example, their special economic zones, which are perimeters where conditions are put in place to allow them to be competitive and produce for the local market. Secondly, they have to have the information, the market information, knowing which product is needed. And here again, we are supporting them and helping the countries through their AfCFTA national committees, which are in place in most of the country today, to understand what should be the policy driver, where they should act very quickly to make sure that they benefit from the AfCFTA. But all the countries are moving. As I've said, they have strategies now, and even the regional economic communities, ECAS and CEMAC, have now a regional AfCFTA strategy. We have supported that. So the sub-region is ready and they are moving toward that. So I'm not that pessimistic. The other countries also are moving.
Mr. Andrew Moon, since the signing of AfCFTA agreement in Kigali in March 2018, some experts like to say that AfCFTA is just a political instrument. Countries are not really ready, right? And they think that is the reason of the low rate of engagement into the guide trade initiative. So for the East African perspective, do you think this can be pertinent?
I'm not sure that's a fair evaluation. The first round of the Guided Trade Initiative in 2022 had 8 countries involved in that, and it was really an experiment to test the rules and regulations under which trade can take place under the AfCFTA. But we've now opened up this year, there's been a new round of the Guided Trade Initiative, and now we have 38 countries across the continent expressing their willingness to join in the Guided Trade Initiative. So I think there's a real willingness on the ground to actually start seeing tangible trade happen under the AfCFTA. And we've seen that already. We've seen some important trades using AfCFTA rules and regulations. So, for example, earlier this year, there was a trade of manufactured products from South Africa, of refrigerators, diversified manufactured goods to Kenya. Under the AfCFTA rules and regulations, and Kenya in turn sent some of its products back. I think we're going to see an acceleration of implementation in the next year or two. It's true that the Guided Trade Initiative was somewhat misinterpreted by some people to be the AfCFTA, whereas it was just a test run of the processes and the rules. And what we really now need is the member states to respect the tariff reduction schedules, which is the elimination of tariffs. And we are now in the 4th year of implementation, because implementation started on the 1st of January 2021. So we should now start to see member states respecting those tariff reduction schedules. And that means quite large reductions. So, for example, for a non-LDC country like neighbouring Nigeria, they should have already been liberalising 80% of tariffs on 90% of tariff lines. So that would represent a considerable market opportunity. One final point is, I think when we were here in Douala in June, we spoke with the port authorities there. They'd explained how they'd actually tried to import fertiliser from Nigeria under AfCFTA rules. Unfortunately, the rules of origin certificates were not available at the time. And so they weren't able to trade under the AfCFTA terms. And that, I think, just demonstrates the importance of the Guided Trade Initiative in making people aware of the kind of paperwork that's required so that your products are legible under those rules and you get the advantage of reduced tariffs.
Intellectual property for you is the key of free movement of African goods. So what is the best way for you to facilitate production of a patent to ensure the protection of innovation?
Thank you. I'm happy we have the question about intellectual property right, especially the patent. So maybe we should just explain what is a patent very simply. A patent will capture a new technological knowledge. So how do you do the thing differently in terms of technical processes, for example? So patent as itself is not an objective, is a mean to achieve something. We do support company or we do encourage company that are patenting, for example, because they have found out about new processes in the industrial domain or new processes that could feed new products or services on the market. So patent is a tool to achieve something. Now, it is true, I think that's why you're asking the question, it is true that if the inventions captured by patents are not protected, then anybody elsewhere than the country where you are based or where you have applied for the patent could actually use it in a new production process without giving you royalties. And I think that's the point you're trying to make. And I agree with that. And that's why we are trying to keep on raising awareness about the importance of patents to protect our own processes and our own technological knowledge. So I should insist on the huge work which is done by the OAPI, the African Organization of Intellectual Property, with 17 member states, mostly Francophone, and also by the ARIPO, because there's a lot of awareness raising that is done, both looking at the startups and entrepreneurs, but also looking at the administration that should help for this. Now, just 2 points importantly. If we want inventions or to be patented, we also have to provide the means to the startup and entrepreneur to defend when they are offended. So we need to find a way to strengthen our legal system and the capabilities in our justice system so that we can actually help those young people or the entrepreneurs or the SMEs that protect their innovation through the invention through patents to actually benefit from the return to innovation. And theoretically speaking, if a company does not trust the system enough to innovate in order to get the return of this innovation, then the company does not have any incentive to actually do R&D activities or even innovation activities and commercialize new products or implement new processes. So the strengthening of the legal system and of the administrative capability to defend the patents is also as important as the one the whole continent is implementing to protect them.
You want to say something?
Yes. There is a wider question as well about what kind of intellectual property regime is most appropriate for developing countries.
Exactly.
And the way the global system has been designed really tends to be to protect strongly the intellectual property of the high-income economies, particularly economies like the United States. Now, there is a school of thought that suggests that for developing countries, somewhat weaker intellectual property regimes are probably more advantageous because for them, technology transfer is very important, whereas the owners of the intellectual property obviously clearly want the strongest possible regime. So there's been a big debate amongst development economists about what's the most appropriate level to set the degree of protection. And there is a feeling sometimes, for example, we've had cases of American companies like Disney trying to appropriate Swahili words or materials, textile materials from West Africa being patented by Western companies. So there is Dr. Mafini clearly knows much more in detail about this tension there.
That exists in the IP system, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay. During the discussion concerning AfCFTA that you chair, we learned that countries and special economic operators are not well aware of specific rules that guide AfCFTA. How can ECA tackle these big issues?
Both Jean-Luc
Mastaki
and ourselves in East Africa, both our offices have been providing support to member states in terms of workshops and events around the AfCFTA to raise general awareness. So we undertake a lot of trainings in our sub-region with the private sector to make them aware of what is the certification that they require to be able to trade under the AfCFTA. And that involves some complex concepts, the rules of origin, for example. There is the ambition for the AfCFTA to move towards a customs union. And if that was imposed, then fortunately there would be no need, there would be no need for the rules of origin certification. Within Europe, for example, you do not need a rules of origin certificate because you have a common external tariff. We're not there yet, but there are ambitions to move forward quickly. So the private sector needs to be aware of what it is they need to produce in terms of those certificates. And also there's a need for training more of customs officials. The border officials are the ones that take the decision on these matters, and they need to be better informed as well about things. So we are making efforts. A lot of development partners are also supporting and working in the same area. The AfCFTA Secretariat is providing a lot of support to member states, but there's still more work to do.
Mr. Mastaki, in July, ECA's Regional Office for Central Africa launched a report on gender and the AfCFTA. How can it be the solution to enhance the engagement of the sub-region into the African single market?
When you look at the map of intra-regional trade and the role of cross-border trade, you can see easily how this trade has a female face. We go to the trois frontières, the border between Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and see the volume of trade, especially in food products, crossing the border every day. And you can see that these policies we are advocating for need really to be gender sensitive. And for us, it was an opportunity actually to try and understand the dynamics at the border. Many borders, but especially one of the studies focused on the trois frontières, the border of trois frontières, and could see that the volume is huge. It's informal, very vulnerable, and also transaction costs in terms of young women crossing the border with a small quantity of merchandise. The transaction costs are very high. So our study has just identified that there are challenges. While we hear a lot about financing issues, there are also other issues related to gender-based violence in the corridors and on the border, and also border infrastructure which are not friendly when it comes to specific needs of women. And beyond that, there is also the need for training. Human capacity of actors within the cross-border trade need to be enhanced. You've talked about the ability to master the rules within the AfCFTA. The small actors are not informed of what is going on. Many of them don't even know what AfCFTA is. When even custom officers are not well educated on this, we need to find a way of involving everybody, especially the specific group. That's why at ECA we are encouraging AfCFTA, which is inclusive and gender friendly. Beyond that, we could see that there is one good thing. A small category of traders engage into digital and who are actually from Cameroon or Equatorial Guinea and exchanging information using social media and so forth. And this can help. While we still have challenges, access to internet is still expensive and the access rate is still low, but also digital literacy is still also a problem. But we need to strengthen the capacity of especially young ones who are involved in cross-border trade and who are willing to embrace the digital innovations and try and see how this can make the change we expect. Of course, this should also link to all the debate on the fintech in the sub-region and the payment system. We are within the safer zone, but if tomorrow we have to imply trade between the DRC and Congo-Brazzaville with different currencies, you understand that payment system has to be also uplifted. So we have really a broad and holistic agenda if we want to make this trade women-friendly.
That touched to the interoperability of payment system, and I like the fact that Idosh underlined it because there's a pilot currently led by the Western African State Central Bank about how to implement exactly the interoperability payment in between the different countries using different means of payments.
I stay with you. Innovation is transgenerational. So what can we say that innovation will be the key of the engagement of youth on AfCFTA?
This is a very interesting and tricky question. There are different parameters in your question. What is for sure is that the youth people are leading the innovation on the market. They are leading the innovation in the communities. And those people constitute the majority of our population. So certainly they will have a major word to say in the way this innovation will be carried out across the borders, in the way this innovation will be also, let's say, will feed each other across the different borders. And if you look at the young people now, because of internet and exactly the digital technologies, they have access actually to what is happening quicker in the different countries. So they are the one that can have also the ambition to say, I want to innovate for the Francophone market. I want to innovate for the sub-Saharan African market. And we have concrete example now. If you look at the startups, when they make their plan for market expansion, they start by the regional, the country, the regional bloc, but very quickly you see in their strategic go-to-market that they already target the whole continent. So the generation now will be, I think, the one that we carry our innovation through trade and for the trade, I think. Yes.
Et c'est la fin donc de ce plateau spécial. Merci infiniment, docteur Jean-Louis Mastaki. J'aime bien dire docteur, je ne sais pas pourquoi, mais je vais caler avec ça. Docteur Jean-Louis Mastaki, vous êtes le directeur du bureau sous-régional Afrique centrale pour la Commission économique des Nations Unies pour l'Afrique. Merci encore. Docteur Mafini, voilà, j'y arrive, Dosso. Permettez, économiste de l'innovation, présidente de l'Organisation internationale de l'innovation des territoires et industries durables. Merci. Et docteur Andrew Moll, qui est le directeur du bureau sous-régional Afrique de l'Est pour la CEA.
Merci à vous.
Merci beaucoup, chers invités. Chers téléspectateurs, c'est ici que nous mettons donc le point final. Merci de l'avoir suivi. À très vite. Au revoir.